Monuments. From Stonehenge to the Statue of Liberty, they vary in their creation and purpose. But what binds them all together is that monuments tell stories. Stories with lessons from the past and lessons for the future. But perhaps the greatest dilemma monuments face is that stories can change, power dynamics can shift, and new narratives about history can emerge. With contentious debates like the campaign to remove Confederate monuments, we must ask ourselves, who gets to represent us? Who gets to decide how history is represented? And do monuments really have continued relevance in our world? To answer these questions, let's travel to a city with one of the strangest monuments in the world. Dakar, Senegal. Sitting on Africa's westernmost shore, Senegal has come to be known as the gateway to Africa. Though no stranger to poverty and political unrest, the former French colony is unusually stable among its West African neighbors. It's in Dakar that we find West Africa's most iconic landmark, an aspiring symbol of African pride that has become the center of a controversial legacy. The African Renaissance Monument. Standing at 170 feet and capping one of Dakar's tallest hills, the tallest statue in Africa rises proudly above the expanse of the city. It was meant to be Africa's Statue of Liberty or Eiffel Tower, an image of prestige representing the African continent, while becoming a natural tourist destination and gathering space. The family emerges from rock, their gazes and bodies touching the sky in a triumphant portrait of Africa's bright and prosperous future. The statue's position above the Atlantic connects the continent's populations to the African diaspora in the Americas and around the world. Yet, the arm stands more as a monument to government corruption, Soviet architecture, and North Korea than African pride. To examine where this statue went astray, we have to go back to its origins. The year was 2010. Senegal was under the presidency of this man, Abdoulaye Wade. The president's rule was marred by corruption, nepotism, bizarre remarks about political rivals, and his greatest boondoggle of all. Wade commissioned the monument with the idea of representing Africa's self-determination with the continent's ultimate prestige project. The concept of the African Renaissance centers on Africa's need for self-reliance to solve issues like poverty, education, and governance, rather than relying on foreign support. When the African Renaissance Monument was unveiled on April 3, 2010, the ceremony was attended by 19 African state leaders, because Wade wanted the monument to represent not just Senegal, but Africa as a whole. The monument sparked widespread mockery and condemnation from the Senegalese population, but it certainly looks impressive at first glance, so what's actually wrong with it? Well, to start, the monument was constructed by Mansudae Overseas Project Group, a division of Mansudae Art Studio, a North Korean construction company responsible for building other statues throughout Africa and, of course, North Korea. If you want to represent a continent of over 1 billion people, wouldn't you think it should be built by the hands of at least some of those people? The architectural style calls to mind the socialist realism statues of the Soviet Union far more than anything remotely African, with the figurative movement and the man's hyper-masculine physique. The figure's semi-nudity is another odd choice for a country that is predominantly Muslim. The monument hasn't fared well into the present, with rusting bronze appearing like a skin infection taking hold. The arm cost $27 million to construct, in a country where most of the population struggle with poverty and food insecurity. As if to further tamper his vision, Wade claimed entitlement to 35% of the monument's revenue as his own, declaring it his intellectual property. Instead of Pan-African pride and President Wade's success, the African Renaissance Monument unveiled to rejection and scorn. It's become viewed as a symbol for the failure of Wade's regime. But in the 13 years since its unveiling, something remarkable has happened. Older, more conservative generations may still reject the monument for its style, costs, and connections to Wade, but the younger generation has accepted the monument for Wade's intentions.
Je pense que c'est un symbole de liberté.
It's a symbol of liberty. It's a symbol of liberty because it was created by President Abdoulaye Wade. Directly, the finger of the child who is pointing is in the direction of the Statue of Liberty in New York, which symbolizes freedom. It depicts a family who has come from the underground against the colonizers who came to colonize Africa. That is what I like about it the most. We want to share our culture and our values, and to share the suffering we had in the time of colonialism. Young people like me like the monument because it represents an African family, and people come from abroad to Senegal just to see the statue, to find out what our culture and our values are like. Even the president of Côte d'Ivoire and other countries gathered there to discuss unity and cooperation.
On peut dire qu'on se sent fier.
You could say I feel proud, like lots of countries.
Plusieurs pays, comme genre New York.
Like New York, where you have your Statue of
C'est
Liberty.
pareil parce que nous avons besoin de...
And each culture needs something that, how do I say, needs to know that they have something that represents them.
It may not have happened like Watt expected, but the African Renaissance Monument has fulfilled its purpose. It has transformed from a mocked symbol of a president's disconnect with his population to an inspiring icon for a continent's unity and image to the rest of the world. Perhaps this shift happened because of a younger, less conservative generation that has grown up with the monument. Instead of symbolizing the megalomania of one man, perhaps the African Renaissance Monument is living up to its potential by symbolizing Africa's future under a new generation.